to First Strike, First Look here on a Tuesday as we get ready for UFC 282 this Saturday night. Dave Ross joined once again by Lou Finocchiaro. You can follow Lou as I do at GamBlue. And, of course, he is the host of the Bout Business podcast. Lou, before we get to this big-time pay-per-view card, one of the last cards before the UFC goes on hiatus for the year, the rest of the calendar year here, I do want to look back to last week's card. And, boy, did you nail it for that main event that, boy, you got to get some of these early lines. And that's why we do some of this First Strike, First Look on a Tuesday for a main event card. You wanted to play the over 2.5, and it hit. And then that number moved to 4.5. And if you got late action on that number, it did not hit as that fight was stopped before the 5th round. Lou, just talk to the importance about finding the value in those lines as you always do.
Well, first of all, Dave, thanks so much for having me on. It's great to take an early look at things. I'm looking at these openers very, very early, as soon as they're either presented or in the cases of fights like named fights like this one, a pay-per-view, you'll get 2 or 3 weeks to look at some of the early lines. And sometimes they're off a little bit. And there was some of that in this particular card, as there are in each card. It's just important to do your work. And I don't really make numbers and compare mine with what the makers do. I just take a first impression based on what they present to me and then try and dig a little deeper to uncover value and see if there's maybe 10, 20 cents of value or derivative that we can obtain by gaining an early, by getting an early jump on things.
Well, let's go right to the main event here, potentially 5 rounds, light heavyweight championship with Jan Blachowicz against Magomed Ankalaev here. Obviously, no Yuri Prochazka with his injury. Glover Teixeira not in this fight as well. So the card has been jumbled a little bit as the months have gone on here. Right now, Blachowicz, the former champ, of course, is plus money, solid plus money, plus 235. I'm seeing here on DraftKings on a Tuesday. Ankalaev here at minus 280 to win this championship bout. What do you make of that number, and what do you make of this fight, and what do you think we're going to see?
So where I track openers, Ankalaev starts minus 200, moves to minus 265. I think current pricing's more indicative of the fight than opening. Let's not forget Jan's 39, as well-rounded and great as he is, been in with the elite of the division and held his own against all of them. Hasn't, what is he, 7-1 just since his loss to Glover. So he has tremendous momentum, but he's 39, fighting a 30-year-old guy that comes in with master of Sambo kind of experience and pedigree. The guy also feels stiff-armed and held back a little by the organization. We're going to get a hungry Ankalaev. I will say this, as far as the total is concerned, the same phenomena is happening with this total. You can find a 3.5 out there with our friends at DraftKings, but everywhere else you look, it's a 4.5. Now, how well do you want to like that 3.5 either side? I think that's about the right number myself. I worry about Jan's chin and Ankalaev's power, and 3.5 could be a little bit long in that fight.
Yeah, right now it is juiced to the under 3.5. As you mentioned at DraftKings, minus $1.25. The over 3.5 right now, minus $1.05. So again, to your point there, you wonder if Blachowicz can extend this fight, maybe take Magomed Ankalaev into the deep championship waters. But right now, that under money, it is juiced that way at minus $1.25. You know, in the co-main event, Lou, it's almost like we've been waiting and waiting. You and I have talked a lot about it in the last year plus of a guy like Paddy Pimblett. And, you know, fade opportunities for Paddy Pimblett. Now he's the co-main event of a pay-per-view. And, oh, my goodness, is this number on the move here where everybody's betting Paddy the Batty against Jared Gordon here. What do you make of this number? And, again, could this be the moment here where it's a little bit of deer in headlights? Or do you think he's ready for this moment?
Dave, honestly, I think the entertainment group that owns the UFC that has to be factored when we see some fights that involve this young man, maybe Sean O'Malley and others. Why? Because they're catching lightning in a bottle to get those eyeballs to look at their sport, and they know exactly what they're doing in this promotion. To answer your question, no, Jared Gordon's made for Paddy the Baddy. That's why we're getting served this up as a co-main event when there's Duplessis and Till and other unbelievable fights on this card. So we have to understand what we're dealing with here, and moving forward in the evolution of gambling on the UFC, we better be well prepared that there's a lot of entertainment value that goes on behind the scenes that we must be aware of.
It's a great point, and you mentioned it. Maybe some people didn't think that Sean O'Malley beat Peter Yan, and sometimes there could be an organizational pull, if you will, to prop up some of these guys. Not saying that's what factored into that decision, but you should be made aware of the guys that they really do want to see shine. Paddy Pimblett is one of those guys. The total right now in that potential 3-round match, over 2.5, is plus $1.05. The under is juiced to minus $1.35. So to that point, for a guy tailor-made, Paddy Pimblett would like to keep this standing. Do you think this might be an early night and Paddy Pimblett gets his stoppage?
Yeah, Paddy's got a little bit of wrestling, really. We just haven't seen too much of it, and he doesn't show it. But Gordon has shown to be a little chinny, Dave. Mrs. Ross, that means if you hit him right here, he can sometimes lose his mind a little bit. And he's going to come in to engage to try and wrestle. So we have a perfect stylistic fight for Paddy. And this is a fight that I think is designed for him to look very good.
Yeah, I think I've been called chinny once or twice in my lifetime. That's for sure, Lou. Let's get to that matchup you mentioned with Duplessis against Till. Darren Till is certainly a guy fans know very, very well. What about Duplessis here? Because he is the favorite at minus $1.80. Darren right now, plus $1.55. Is this an educated fight fans fight where you realize all the skills that Duplessis has versus a guy like Till? We know the power that he has. Is this a bad matchup for Darren?
I think it's a bad matchup for Darren because anything at 185, which is a fair fight for Darren, is a bad matchup for him because I don't believe he's quite the fighter that we thought he was when he was young, cutting weight, and this big, huge bully dominating at 170 when he'd walk in on fight night at 189 pounds. Now he's forced to fight guys his own size, his own capacity, and he's had tremendous trouble with it. He's been unbelievably inactive. He's had to overcome tremendous injury. He's palling around with his buddy Chimaev, who I would hope is really helping him with his wrestling because still doesn't possess much wrestling acumen. So if he's improved there, that will help him against a young, strong bull of a kid from South Africa named Duplessis, I believe. Yes. And he comes in very well-rounded, strong, explosive. And if you look at the total in the fight, this one may not be going all 3 rounds.
Yeah, I always go the American way with Duplessis, but it really is Duplessis, as you said, Lou. Very good. The under right now is juiced minus $1.45 to 2.5 rounds. To your point here, if you think the fight's going to go potentially to the cards, the over 2.5 right now, plus $1.15. So maybe the bookmaker's expecting a quicker night there. This card is loaded. Obviously, whenever you get a pay-per-view, Bryce Mitchell against Ilya Topuria is on this card. We got Biggie Boy, Jairzinho Rozenstruik against Chris Daukaus on this card. Out of those 2 fights, which one intrigued you more from a price standpoint here on a Tuesday?
I will just say, Dave, that on the podcast, I gave out Duplessis minus 135. He's higher than that now, and I think he might continue to rise a little bit. As far as to answer your question, Topuria, Bryce Mitchell, Thug Nasty, that's going to be an unbelievable fight. Mitchell opens plus 135. He's plus 125 now. And by Friday when we speak, I think that's closer to pick'em. I think Mitchell longer, taller, in with better, and he's about 4 or 5 years older. I think that maturity going to do well for him, and I like him in this spot against Topuria.
All right, it's going to be very interesting, that number, as you mentioned. Right now, Bryce Mitchell down to plus $1.15, so he is taking in some of that money very quickly. On the Daukaus against Biggie Boy fight here for the heavyweights, Biggie Boy, small favorite here, about minus $1.70. I'm seeing Daukaus right now plus $1.45. Is Biggie Boy too big for Chris Daukaus?
No, I think perhaps Chris Daukaus is too fast for Biggie Boy, and I tend to lean to Daukaus here. He's got some bad recency going for him, after what's happened to him, I haven't been impressed with Biggie Boy Dave.
Yeah, we got a great card. Obviously, Chris Curtis against Joaquin Buckley. Billy Q is back in there in the octagon too. Out of any of the other fights on a Tuesday, Lou, do you see some real value out there before these lines move and we get to First Strike on Friday?
I know betting syndicates and wise guys are hitting the Billy Q under pretty hard. That line has moved. That's a fight because Hernandez is dropping in weight. I can't do anything until weigh-ins. For some syndicate to be betting totals on a fight as sensitive as that seems interesting to me. It makes some sense because if Hernandez has a bad cut, he could go. If he has a good cut, he could knock the other kid out. So there's a little tidbit for you right there.
That under 2.5 right now, plus $1.30 in the Billy Q against Hernandez fight. The over right now, minus $1.60. Hey, I mention it each and every week, and I do it for good reason, Lou. The Bout Business podcast, you've been on fire all year long. Obviously, the releases that you give at VSiN.com as well. Tell the people what they get and why they should tune in weekly to the Bout Business pod.
Well, the why is you're going to get fight passion. And the hopefully is you're going to get some winners as we did last week. It's 16 minutes of my final releases each UFC card. We do it, but we track, we run it as a business. And I sure appreciate you letting me on and speak about it, Dave, as well. The passion that I have for fighting, and I know I share that with you.
Yes, you do. And I love it, Lou. I look forward to it each and every week, not just here on Tuesdays, but certainly for the full hour on First Strike on Fridays. Bring the passion. You do it every week, Lou. You do a great job. We appreciate you. Again, follow him on Twitter @GamBlue and listen to the Bout Business podcast. Until Friday, fight fans, we'll see you for the full hour. First Strike on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN Sports Betting Podcasts.